That Was Yesterday podcast is brought to you by Define Mind and Body Wellness, my wellness center here in Glastonbury, Connecticut, where we specialize in holistic services to help shortcut the process so that you can see results fast, but learn to do it in a habitual way. So many of the topics we talk about are part of the program that our clients receive, except they get much more in-depth detail. Also, my workbook of the 10-week program to lose and never look back, which is only available to our patients at Define. If you are interested in holistic body fat spot reduction, or our pod to increase your metabolism, or our cold plunge, or our sauna, which is the best sauna in the world, that I promise you. I know that sounds biased, but you'll see for yourself. Please go to definewellnesscenter.com. You will be prompted to put your information in, and make sure to mention podcast when you do, as you will be eligible for a bigger discount on our introductory services because you are a listener. Appreciate you. Have a great day and enjoy today's podcast. So today we're going to talk about cravings. That's something that's been sort of coming up a lot. I mean, it's always there. It's always there. And there's so much more to cravings than what we perceive there to be. And I think the big issue a lot of people think with cravings is that, well, it becomes something that you internalize, as if like there's something wrong with me. I don't have the willpower. I just need to cut it out completely, yada, yada, yada. So we're going to shed some light on that, do a Q&A after that, and then we're going to get into a light hypnosis that will help the patterns around cravings and help reprogram automatic habits. And, you know, with the hypnosis, it's very powerful when you are able to be in a space where you're open and receptive to the actual hypnosis. And, you know, obviously that includes like being in the moment, being open to the guidance and being in a quiet space and headphones on, if ideal, so you're not hearing other things. And then it also means like, you know, nurturing that process, right? Like watering the seeds. I always think about like the mind like a beautiful garden, in that if you just let a garden go, like nobody has ever grown a beautiful garden on accident. We know it's challenging. It takes work. And if you just have the idea of a garden in your backyard, but you or nobody else actually tends to it, then it's just going to overflow. There's going to be a lot of weeds, and it's just not going to be any resemblance of a beautiful garden. However, if you take the time to nurture it, and then in part of nurturing it isn't just like laying the bed and getting the right soil and planting the seeds, like that's all important. Those are important first steps. But then after that, it's watering it, right? It's making sure you are weeding out. And that's why I love that analogy when it comes to the mind, because like nature is going to grow weeds, just as in the mind, we're naturally going to grow automatic negative thoughts. They're just going to arise. We have to, if you can understand this and nothing else, this will serve you very well on your journey, especially feeling good about yourself, as you should and you deserve to feel. But our brains aren't designed for happiness. They're just not. They're designed for survival. And that could confuse our reality to make us feel overly anxious and overly fearful, because your system is at a heightened state. Deregulated nervous system is something we talk a lot about. And once again, something that's directly linked to craving issues and many others. So I encourage you guys, think of your mind like a garden. Be aware when nature brings in poisonous plants and weeds, so you can pull them out. You know, just like if you do have a garden, right? Like I couldn't, I mean, I'm guessing it would be frustrating, but I don't think you're going to like call your garden names and yell at it. And as you're pulling out the weeds, like you just sort of reckon, like it's kind of an inherent exchange of like, oh, there they are again. I just got a weed. I just got to pull them out. Like we accept that. We accept that grass is going to grow by itself. Right. So it's just a sort of an objective thing of like, oh, we just got to cut it, you know? But when it comes to our internal minds, we have a hard time accepting that we're going to have negative thoughts. That's just a part of your survival. A part of the human species survival is to have negative thoughts. But it doesn't mean those thoughts are real. It doesn't mean that you need to entertain them. It doesn't mean you're a bad person for having them. Like just because you have a thought doesn't mean you're going to act on that thought. And doesn't represent who you are. So when you can understand those things, we can start to treat them more objectively And when you have more objectivity, you have more clarity. When you have more clarity, you'll be more calm, you'll be less overwhelmed, and you'll be able to be consistent in all the things that you want to do. So, with that in mind, let's get into a little bit more about cravings, because sometimes they can hit and you can feel like, oh man, game over, and especially if you don't understand what's going on and why they're there, you can feel like you're always out of control. And I think I've mentioned this every single live and almost every conversation I get in, but I can't stress it enough. Like, watch yourself if you say things like, I'm not disciplined or I just don't have control. That is not true. That's just not true. Now, yes, you may not be applying that to cravings right now, but I can guarantee you're applying self-control and discipline to other elements of your life. So it's not that you don't have it. It's just that we have to build that congruence. And when these four things get in your way, well, it's kind of hard to, if you're not aware of them, to recognize that and to take a step back. So, I would encourage you that, like, if you think about cravings as something you have to fight, then you're really fighting the wrong thing, and you're fighting a game that you're never going to win because they're just not going to go away. And this is like, I don't want to get too off subject. I work with a lot of people who are taking, GLP-1s. I have no judgment on that at all. We just have to have a nuanced discussion on it. But what I've heard from, people like Oprah and others is who are pushing, and why are they pushing it so much? Well, let's look at the finances related to that and we have a better idea. But to say that individuals need to be on a GLP for the rest of their life, that's just how you are, like, that is so disempowering and not true. It's not true. Like, our brains genetics haven't changed over the course of 30 years to say all of a sudden people have this deficiency where they can't control their eating. Like, that's just not accurate. There's so many other things that go into it that is not someone's brain chemistry. But the reason why they're pinning it on brain chemistry is because if that is the issue, then what's the solution? Medicine. And if the solution is medicine, guess what they get to do? Get paid, baby. That's what it is. If you're going to be on the rest of your life, gosh, that's a ridiculous amount of money that they're looking to make from it. And I say all of this to say, again, there's nothing wrong with GLP-1s. It could, if they're used as a bridge, but to be on the rest of your life, that is, I believe in human potential way too much. I've worked with too many people who have had obesity their entire life, morbidly obese their entire life, and all of a sudden turn that around. Their brain didn't change. Yes, maybe we worked on some subconscious patterning, but like, you just can't convince me otherwise. And so I would just encourage you to say, if someone's telling you you've got to be on a medication to control your weight for the rest of your life, I wouldn't trust that person. I just wouldn't. And so that's where, like, this conversation gets really prevalent these days, because a lot of now the term food noise is becoming a thing where people will say, like, well, when I'm on, say, Ozempic, it goes away. And when I'm off of it, it comes back. Therefore, I need to be on it. And again, it's like, well, think about this. Like, if you took something as a method to reach a certain goal, and that one thing was driving what led to you getting closer to that goal, but nothing else changed, why would you expect it to go away when you get off of it? Right. And that's not your fault. I mean, this is not what they're telling you in commercials, right? They don't tell you that. So I guess my point is like, I think food noise is such an issue is because people are deceived to think that, well, if I just take this, then I'll be good. And then when they stop taking it, they're like, oh no, I'm not good. I need this. But it's like, well, what was given to that person to help them deal with all the thoughts that they've had around food, maybe their entire life? Nothing in most cases. So yeah, of course it's still there, right? And I did a whole food noise challenge. It's under Classroom on our coaching site, and that whole idea there is just to help people realize, like, we just need to turn it down and realize you have control over it and really understand what it is. And when you do that, you can start to, you can gain a better sense of control. But if you just don't do any of that and just expect a program or a pill or a surgery to just remove that, it's not going to work.
That's just not how it works. The brain is a big part of the internal part has a big part of any type of transformation. A true transformation is an inside out, outside in transformation. So if you only try to affect your outside, which is what a GLP would do, or a gastric bypass or gastric sleeve, because it's just helping the external. It's yeah, you can argue, oh well, the gastric sleeve or something will strengthen your stomach. Okay, I can understand that, but the delivery mechanism is really that you're just eating less essentially, and therefore losing weight. And but if you don't change anything about how you think about yourself and how you think about eating, and if you don't learn foundational principles of nutrition, then you're going to be right back where you started. And I've just talked to way too many women, especially over the last 20 years, who have just been sold snake oil when it comes to something that say, just do this and you'll be good. And then they're way worse off after. And I'm just sick and tired. I feel for people who have been down that hole. Because in some cases you have irreversible things that happen that you just can't get back. And so I just think there needs to be a more nuanced discussion. And so I don't want to go too far into all that, but what I would say is that cravings are not a discipline problem. They are a pattern. And when I talk about gaining back control, I want to be able to separate that you don't inherently not have control. That's where I say, like, we can work with the brain. I look at it more like software and a computer. Like if you have a computer, you can upload new software onto it, right? And with that premise, you have control over what that computer's output's going to be, right? But if the premise is like, well, that's just a broken computer, so you just need to have this specific, insert whatever on it, well, then what can you do? Nothing. You have no control. There's no empowerment. It's just, that's how you are. There's something wrong with you. And there's nothing wrong with you. There's not. It's just something that you just never really maybe had the opportunity to learn about. And they don't teach emotional intelligence. They don't teach mental, like things that help mental health and stress regulation. And so if you had some insecurities, if you had a traumatic life, if you're going through a lot and all these things boil together, well, of course you're having a hard time controlling your eating, but that's not a reflection of who you are or what you are. So we just need to think about it as like, there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with the computer in that example. We just need to update a new program. That's all. Your brain works perfectly fine. We just need to update a new program. Like you have learned things in the last 30 years that you didn't know in the previous 30 years. That's learning. That's the growth mindset. That is fundamentally how I view the entire world. And you can't tell me that people can't have this ability. If you just look at your own life, you've had that ability. There's things that you've learned that you didn't know before, right? It sounds silly to say that. So to then say that you can't learn to control your cravings, I'm not buying that. I'm just not. So let's get into it. So cravings come from 4 places. And if you don't understand these, you're going to always feel out of control. So the first one is physiological. This is the body, right? So when your blood sugar dips, so this is a problem I have with you might hear things about like 1 meal a day programs, or, like extended fasting programs, is that you're setting yourself up for failure. And by the way, as a side note here, this is why with our intermittent fasting protocol at Define, we have 2 meals. It could be 3, but at least 2 meals in the 8-hour window of feeding. But we allow obviously water, but also super greens. We highly encourage protein shake, protein and water, and collagen, 25 grams, 20 grams of collagen and water separately inside your fasted window. That's not like a new thing. I just decided, oh, this sounds good. That's been tested and tried for over 16 plus years, way before intermittent fasting was popular. I've worked with countless women on it. You're getting a high degree of fasting, but what it's doing ultimately is giving your body a small level of satiety, but not enough to completely block the benefits of fasting. But you're giving your body nutrition that is going to help you. And the protein is, your body's going to absorb that protein. So you're still getting the benefits of fasting, but your blood sugar is not going to completely drop, which is what happens when so many people do intermittent fasting. You might say the traditional way, where it's just water and you eat in an 8-hour window. It's like, okay, well, your blood sugar might be such that when you get to that 8-hour window, you're just famished. and you're just eating way more than you should. That's not the goal of fasting, right? So blood sugar has a lot to do with things. Another thing that happens with blood sugar, you may not identify it as such, but let's say you have a really intense day at work, and some people, don't have the time to have a lunch, which we would have to talk about. There's always strategy with that, even if you don't have the time. But let's just say you have a lunch, you have a really stressful day, and then you're leaving the office later than you want to, and you're on your way home. You get home, the house is a mess, and the kids are screaming, and you got to cook dinner, and you're starving, right? And so one might say, I just don't have the control, and so I'm eating these things. No, your blood sugar is out of whack, because you got to think about your brain affects your blood sugar, and your blood sugar affects your brain. In other words, like when you're using your brain, you're burning a lot of calories. You need calories, you need nutrition. So yeah, like naturally your blood sugar is going to get out of whack. If you ate lunch at 12, you get home at 6, and from 12 to 6, you had a really stressful day using your brain. Yeah, when you get home, that's not a willpower thing. That's a very normal response. Like, hey, I need food fast, right? And the fast food that we crave, your processed foods, your chips, your chocolates, these things, like that's a physiological element too. They taste good, but it's also a physiological element because it gives us an instant spike in our insulin, but then it drops us off, right? So strategy there, just as a side note, is when you're coming home from work or you're out and about for a long day, like have a shake, a powder ready. So you just have a powder, say greens or a protein, and you just add water when you're ready to drink it, i.e. on your way home. This will stabilize your blood sugar. So by the time you get home, you're going to notice you have a heightened sense of control without changing any discipline, right? It literally takes you 1 minute to take a bottle, to take a scoop, and to put it in there, and to close it, and then to carry it with you, and then to fill the water up when you're ready. Like that's not a time crunch, right? So that doesn't require discipline. And it just shows you, if you start doing that, you're going to notice you're going to have less of a blood sugar rush in those situations. But blood sugar is a big thing. Low protein is a big thing. If you're eating a lot of carb, this is it blows my mind knowing what I know now about nutrition and human behavior, that we grew up in a world that encouraged breakfast, the most important meal of the day, the biggest meal of the day. Oh, by the way, mostly carb based. And it's like, what? Like that's the horrible way to start your day. You're just loading yourself with carbs, and especially if you have a slower metabolism, and that's naturally going to crash your system and make you feel lethargic and not good. But the American diet at large is mostly carbohydrates. So that is another reason why, and I'm going to get to the bacteria part of this, but if you do have and this is another reason why protein is so important. That's one of many, by the way, especially for women post-menopause, look, your body is naturally losing muscle at an accelerated rate through sarcopenia. That's just a natural thing that's happening. That happens to men too, but it happens to women at an accelerated rate. So there's one reason to have protein. Now, if you're not doing resistance training regularly, weekly, well, your protein intake becomes that much more important. But there's a lot more to it. And so if you're having protein regularly, it's going to help anchor your blood sugar and anchor your eating decisions hormonally. So that's another way to look at it. Another issue physiologically is dehydration. Now, as you know, as a definer, we are very big on dehydration. We stress it a lot because you just need to, when it comes to actually need to, physiologically need to, when you do our treatments, you feel thirstier when you're doing our red light. Why? It's just the system working. It's flushing out the excess, right? So it's a natural response to want to drink or to need to drink more water, right? And you got to do that, obviously, or you feel dehydrated. This happened. I had a woman who, she came in for an introductory appointment last week, and this is kind of my fault. I should have asked better questions, but I asked her that day, she drank about 60 ounces a day of water. And so I asked her that, and the next day I talked to her, and she's like, I felt really nauseous and lightheaded. I'm like, to myself, what? This something's not adding up here. So I'm like, 60 ounces isn't that bad. But what I didn't ask her, and I should have, and I had her come back in. I'm like, I'm not buying this. There's something going on here. Let's figure it out. So I brought her back in. I was like, look, I need you to drink 80 ounces of water, which would have been half her body weight. And then I talked to her the day she came in, and I'm like, wait a second. I'm like, you said you had electrolytes. What was the electrolytes you had? She told me they only had like 50 grams of sodium, which we got to realize, like, what we bought, I say bought, like what we were told about sodium growing up is that it's bad, it's negative. And by the way, table salt is dog shit for sure. If you look at a frozen meal and it has high sodium, dog shit for sure. But not all sodium is created equal. And we need sodium to function optimally, right? So, and if you have high blood pressure, you have to be careful even with good sodium. I have to say that. But in her situation, she had low blood pressure. And that's something I should have asked her last week that I didn't think about until yesterday. And so she mentioned that. I'm like, well, that's it. And then that's what prompted me to ask her about her electrolytes she took, because she said she took 2 packets of it. They only had 50 milligrams of sodium. You juxtapose that to LMNT, it's 1,000 grams of sodium. So if you have lower blood sugar, that's what was the disconnect. Now, her body needed more water from the treatments. So she was only drinking 60 ounces. That, if I was advising her away from our red light treatment, I would still say she needed 80 ounces because that was half her body weight. So she was already kind of underhydrated. But what made her reaction worse was she just didn't have enough replenishment of electrolytes. And with low blood pressure, that is it's gonna make that issue worse. So of course, she drank 80 ounces, had element, felt perfectly fine, is ready to rock, starting her drop 1 size this week, right? So that's just an example to show you that, like, this is how much nutrition has to do with how we feel. And certainly how we feel oftentimes dictates our cravings. So that's kind of like a side. But what I would say is, for sure, is if you are dehydrated, you're going to be hungry. You're going to have cravings that are worse. So half your body weight in ounces of water per day, because essentially when the blood sugar, the low protein, the dehydration, when those things are present, it's essentially signaling to your body, like, hey, fix something here, correct something. And again, it's going to reach for something that's going to give you an instant spike. All right. The next thing, and this is kind of gross, but it's real. And this is, again, why it's not so much self-control, but gut bacteria. That's right. And this is another thing, like, we don't realize, but your gut is filled with bacteria, and what you feed them matters. Now, when I first started in this industry, I did a lot of research on a lot of things. And one of the things was food marketing. And there's a book I read early on that really blew my mind. I can't think of the name, but I learned through there that these big food manufacturers spend billions of dollars, billions. And this was like 2010. So think about time value of money, what they're spending now, but it's billions of dollars at that point to manipulate food in a way that stimulates, repeat behavior. So whether it's the way they're framing a package on marketing to stimulate different things in your psychological sort of brain, but also creating foods that are going to kind of sit in your gut and want to replicate. So like things that are added sugar, like highly added sugar or artificial sweeteners, those are guts that are made to replicate. And the way that replication happens is through the feeling of cravings. So this is why, especially if you're somebody who has a sweet tooth, and this is why, again, why I do have issue with 20 calorie sweeteners or 100-calorie packs, or it's just whatever. Because if you're like, and I say it's just whatever, it's like that's the way they frame it. Oh, well, just one little packet and it's just 20 grams of calories and 3 grams of sugar. It's like, okay. But if your gut has a lot of bacteria in it, that matters. And that's going to make you want more and more and more over time, So, and things like Crystal Light and Pepsi Zero and Gatorade Zero and all these things, like, they're not designed for you to have them once and be done. Gatorade's original purpose might have been replenishment, but if you look at what was in the 70s compared to what it is now, it's literally 2 different things, completely 2 different things. So if you're ingesting a lot of that and you have over time, that's creating a lot of gut inflammation, which, by the way, when you have gut inflammation, you're likely going to have cellular inflammation, which is also known as weight loss resistance. But again, it keeps you stuck because you can't really penetrate cellular inflammation. There's not many ways you can do that. The best way I know is our red light pads. But the other problem there is you're having something that's almost like, bacteria calling on more of its friends, the way to think about it. As gross as that is, that's what's happening. And especially if you're not moving your bowels regularly, if you're having diarrhea and constipation, you're having a lot of wastes that are just left there. And so if you ever doctor ever tell you, oh, that's just how your body is. No, it's not. No, it's not. I don't care what your medical degree is. Yeah, I know I couldn't score 1,000 on my SATs and I tried. I know. Sad. I'm not a medical doctor. I understand that. But you cannot tell me that when I've worked with way too many people who couldn't go and now are regular. So I'm not buying that. And you shouldn't either, because not only can it lead to more cravings, it can lead to cellular inflammation in the gut, it can lead to free radicals lead to cancers, diseases, all of these things. So gut bacteria is a real thing. And basically some bacteria just thrives sugar, processed foods, artificial sweeteners. So when you consistently have these things, bacteria grows, they adapt, and of course they push for more of the same. So if your body is like asking for sugar, I guess that's the way to think about it. Like if you feel like you're getting a craving and you have a lot of that stuff I mentioned in your diet, that's kind of what's happening. Your body's like asking for sugar. So things we got to change here. And again, like I'm not one to say like never have it. Not saying that doesn't work either. But when you do have cellular inflammation, it is worth like cutting all that stuff out for a short time to get your gut up to speed, to get your system regulated so that you can approach it more with a level mind or say just you're in better position to control it. Because like to say that you should never have anything with added sugar again is ridiculous. And I would never say that because it's just not smart. It's not pragmatic at all. And I'm more about pragmatism when it comes to habits you want to sustain, because that's the only way. So that said, though, if you do have these things regularly, and this is a good period when you're doing these treatments, like cut that stuff out and take back your control. Because think about it. It's like you're fighting. Like if you think about, let me open my window really quick. If you think about, I hate to use this example with what's going on, but it's the only thing I can kind of give you in this moment anyway. If you think about like your body as an island, and say if you were getting attacked, right? Well, when there's all these things present, there's a lot of like, there's a lot of like added sugar and artificial sugars in your diet. You're not as hydrated as you want to be. You have a lot of stress. You have some insecurities and perhaps a self-belief that you're fat or you're not disciplined. You don't feel good about the way you are right now in this moment. You've tried other programs and felt like you failed or didn't work for you, and life is busy. You have all these things going on, which by the way are way too common, right? That's the equivalent of being on an island and getting attacked around the entire perimeter. It's like, where do you start? It's like everything's caving in on you, and it can feel like that sometimes. So the way we can kind of take back control is one step at a time, but it starts with awareness. And if we're going to prioritize, it would be the next thing that I wanted to share, which is the nervous system. It's the stress response. When you have high stress, it seeks relief because your psyche needs something, especially again in the world we live in, right? Like you can't really find relief if you're on social media, if you're working in an office with people, you're at a family dinner with people with different opinions, you name it, you can't escape chaos. And like our brains are not designed to know about the entire world's problems and all these negative people you might see get filtered through your algorithms online. Like we're just not. So when you're constantly taking all of that in regularly, and your brain, by the way, is already programmed for what? Not happiness, programmed for survival. Well, gosh, like you're really at a point where you just need to give me something. Like, can I just get away from this chaos, right? And food is that resort for people oftentimes, and it can be. So stress can obviously lead to these types of decisions because you're seeking relief. Boredom, looking for some sort of stimulation. A lot of people say I eat when I'm bored at night, right? Or I eat when I'm bored. And it just becomes a thing. And this is why getting control of your eating is so hard, because things like stress can affect it and boredom can affect it. And then also there's a physiological element of like your body actually needs it to function, So it's like, it's very confusing on the brain of like, wait, this is good. I need this. This is fuel. This is not what's going on, but this makes me feel good short term. It's a lot going on, Again, why it's so hard. That's why it's so hard. There's just too many things happening at once, but it's not impossible. And you have the power to take it back. I promise you. And to the degree you work on it and you communicate, I will do everything in my power to make sure that you do. You have to do your part and you have to have an open mind, but I guarantee you will overcome it. There's zero doubt. You just got to be open to it and keep doing your best. That's it. And that's the thing. I mentioned the island example, getting caved in by all the surrounding forces. Well, look, you're human, okay? Sometimes they're going to break down boundaries and knock through your village. That happens. Happens to me, happens to everybody. It's okay. It's not about that. It's not about being perfect. It's just about recognizing that this is a process and it's not a linear process. And you just can't accept the status quo. I mean, you can, but like you're just going to live with more of what you've experienced up to this point, except a lot worse. You can challenge the status quo by saying, I will not stand for this. I'm going to find a way. And if you have that mindset, you will. Just every day, new day, start fresh. So the other thing that's happening too, because of all the chaos, is overwhelm. And so like in my hypnosis clients that I work with, especially my weight loss hypnosis clients, a lot of times, and I mentioned this a few weeks back, but a lot of times the inner rebel, as I call it, I do a lot of parts work. So like there's sub-personalities within all of us. There are, you can think of them as sub-personalities, you can think of them as energies, you can think of them as parts, as I like to call them, but there are parts within us, and the inner rebel is one that is oftentimes disowned. It's pushed down into the shadow, especially, let's just use the example of a typical woman who, maybe graduated college, maybe not, but got a full-time job, got married, mothered kids, full-time job. Everything in their life became about everybody else. And they became less and less slowly of who they are at their core. And over time, that inner rebel just crawls in a hole. But the inner rebel seeks some sort of escape. And that happens with closet eating, because that's something you can control, that will make you feel good, that nobody can have a say about, right? But obviously, as we know, that's not something that's going to help long term. But you can understand why it happens, right? So there's a lot there with working with the inner rebel. But in short, simply doing something for yourself, like coming into define, like something that you say, you know what, no, I'm prioritizing me. This is my time. I'm not answering the phone, and I'm going to do this. You'll be fine. Make your own dinner, whatever it is. That matters, and that goes a long way. And a lot of you guys have already known that from coming in here. All right, what else? Patterns and conditioning, right? The old Pavlov's dog. I forget the exact study, but you guys know what I'm talking about. It's a reward system. Like if you reward your mind with some sort of predictable outcome, it's going to seek that. So if it's set up where it's like, oh, I just, I at the end of the hard day, I crack open a beer, like this is the thing that a lot of men especially fall into. That's a reward for a hard day's work, and your psychological brain starts to like, I need that. you know? And this is something I try to talk to a lot of guys about, is that you think about the amount of like I say unnecessary, because you don't need that for a day. And sometimes you might feel like you do and you do, and that's okay. And you have it fine. But like, if you're training your body, that's what you need. The amount of unnecessary calories that you're consuming over the course of a year will blow your mind, you know? So, but that's just mindless behavior that you're just sort of like conditioned to. Get home, open the fridge, sit on the couch, crack a beer. That could be with anything though, you know? So again, I'm not here to say like you shouldn't have a drink after work sometimes or whatever. I would say for sure, like, you want to limit beer for sure. I don't care. Like, it's just too heavy, you know? And if your metabolism's slowing down and if you have a lot of stomach fat, like, it's not going to work out well for you if you drink a lot of beer. I can promise you that. And that's just is what it is. So like, once in a while I have one or two maybe, but that is definitely an alcohol that I would not recommend, especially with gluten and all of that. But, and added sugars. In any event though, like, those are patterns. And so part of this is breaking a pattern. Or for example, like, you go on a couch to enjoy a show and it's like, okay, well, I'm trained. I go on a couch. Then I grab something and I eat it as I'm on the couch and I watch. Like, again, that's just a pattern. That's just the program. That's your default system update well, I shouldn't say update. That's your default system running its program. So the way around that is to reinstall a new program, you know? That's why, like, years ago, I created these deck of cards, these exercise deck of cards, which we actually still have some downstairs when I had my gyms. And the whole premise of that was like, hey, like, put them by your coffee table so that you can see them, and just take one out and do it when you're watching TV. Like, if you just do that, like, that breaks the pattern. And by the way, here's a really simple thing you can do for pattern interruption is if you feel yourself about to do something, or if you just at least train yourself before you're about to do something. So in other words, you know, when you get in the house, you hang your hat up and you put your keys down. Instead of going for the fridge, you might have like a yellow Post-it note on the fridge as a reminder. And then you just pinch yourself enough that you can actually feel it. And it's called the pattern interrupt. You're like, all right, like, take back control, right? That matters. Like, this is a technique that works really well. I wasn't actually planning on getting into this, but it'll take a second. You take a Post-it notes, and on the top you write strength on one half and acceptance on the other. Now, this has worked far before I got into hypnosis with people, but the technique I used to have people do is take a Post-it note like this and put it on your fridge, put it in front of the cabinet that has the cookies or whatever. And the simple like recognition of this, the strength means that like you see it, you recognize it, you're stopped. So just looking at this, the recognition of it, you're pausing. Like, oh, what is that? Boom, that right there, that millisecond matters, because now that's a pattern interrupt. Now, instead of just opening the cabinet, you're stopping and looking at that. That's a pattern interrupt. You're breaking what your brain is used to doing, because so many of these craving activities are happening subconscious because you're trained to do them, because it has a reward there. And even if nobody trained you to do them, you might have trained yourself to do them just by default, right? By doing it repeatedly. So you see this, and strength represents when you see it, you're like, okay, I know what's going to happen here. I ain't going to do it today. Not doing it today. So then you just tally strength. Next day you go and you're like, yeah, I don't give a shit what Joe said. I had a shitty day today. Let me grab a cookie. And then, but you just say acceptance, because that's important. Because like, we can't just say food makes us feel good, because it doesn't. That's an incomplete statement, because it doesn't make you feel good after. It might in a moment, but very seldomly are you looking back an hour later being like, man, I'm really glad I binged there. It made me, I feel so good right now. Or the next day, you know, waking up and like not having some level of shame or regret. Like, that normally is always the case whenever you overeat something you didn't want. Damn it, I did it again, right? What does that do to your self-esteem? Doesn't help it. So the acceptance part is the grace, because all these things that we talk about, again, I am not a robot, nor do I ever pretend to be perfect or stand on a soapbox and talk to you like, oh, I have all of this figured out so well, you need to get on my page. No, We are human. I am messy. You're messy. Everybody that's ever existed in this planet, everybody who you look up to online, who you're like, man, if I could just be like that, that person is messy too. Now, there might be a lot of things that they're doing that you have no idea about, or perhaps they're constantly working at it so that they don't have the issues, right? But they're still messy. So don't ever forget that. You put somebody else on a pedestal, you're minimizing yourself. Don't do that. You're human. Everybody's human. Nobody's above anybody. We're the same. So this is just a technique that helps. Acceptance is just acknowledgement that I am human, I am messy, and that's okay. Now, the thing with acceptance that's happened in this world we live in is it's like, oh, it's okay. There's no bad food. Oh, yeah. Bullshit. There is bad food. And it's not okay to eat what you want all the time. You can say that it is, but you're just lying to me, you, and everybody else in the world. That's not accurate. Like, it will affect your health. It will affect your self-esteem. It will affect your ability to move. It will affect your longevity, all the stuff. So there is an effect. There's a cause and effect to everything. So we can't say that it's not. That's completely naive and silly. But we also can't be like, oh, damn it, what's wrong with you? You're this, you're that. You should know better. No, whatever. Who gives a shit? Like, the world is not going to stop spinning because you had a cookie last night. It's not a big deal. Just get over it. Boom. Accept it. Accept it. That's so important. If you can just do that, you won't stop. The problem people have so often is well-intentioned people have a lot going on, and they try to carve out a period of time and be perfect with their eating and their lifestyle and their workouts and all this stuff. Then one thing happens and they're like, oh, now's not a good time, or I can't do this, or this is not a good, this, that, the other thing. And then they just proverbial yo-yo up and down the rest of their life. But if you can just say in those moments of like, I don't need to be perfect right now, but I do need to move forward, that is so powerful. So just make sure, guys, don't be so hard on yourself. Like, acceptance is powerful. Any event, this is a good technique. And I can guarantee you, if you do these tallies throughout the course of a month, you might have more acceptances, but I can guarantee you're going to have some strengths. And that's something you can build off of. So strategy is a really important part. Is another strategy is to have things that, and I'm not saying to just completely replace it, but I can replace this cravings, but there are things that are better to have when they're cravings, right? I like frozen fruit for that. Now, there's nothing wrong with fresh fruit, but frozen fruit, because if you eat it too fast, you get a headache. So if you eat it slower, your body starts to register, you're eating. I'm going to get a signal of full, right? Fruit has water in it. Fruit has fiber in it. Our bodies are accustomed to fruit. Please don't nobody say, well, fruit has sugar in it. No shit. But our bodies process fruit or sugar and fruit since the dawn of civilization. It knows how to do it. Yes, some people have food allergies. I get it. But like most of the time, you're going to be able to process fruit. So it's not bad. So frozen fruit is a good thing. Linden chocolate is a good brand. It's one that's a common brand. And I'm not saying to have the whole bar, but have a serving. There's actually like nutrients in that too. 70% cacao. You could do 60%, ideally 70%, but there's protein in it. There's good fat. And don't fall for like Hershey's cacao or any of those other brands cacaos, because they're ultimately just trying to lie to you and make you addicted. You know, the cleaner something is in this way, you're getting what you pay for. So those are some good options. When it comes to the salt fix, you can put a little sea salt in your water. Generally, when you have sea salt in your water, you're not like, man, I want to chase that down with a pretzel, like it doesn't give you that feeling. The other thing you could do with salt is using taking sea salt on cucumbers or celery. So those, again, like some ideas, some swaps, if you will. And I would recommend, like Pavlov's dog. If you condition yourself to have a bad treat, well, condition yourself in a way that's going to be more beneficial to you. In other words, we see this with our kids. We don't carry bad food in the house, but even healthy snacks are still snacks. But when we cut up vegetables and have them there, guess what they do? They eat them, right? So like same with you. If you had another option, you'd probably opt for that. I can understand you don't have time to cut all this, that, the other thing. Okay, buy pre-cut then, but that's a way. The other thing I would say on this, then we got to get this thing moving, is whenever, this is something I learned through bodybuilding, whenever you brush your teeth, talking about training, right? You've trained your body to not eat after you brush your teeth. Your body has been trained for that inadvertently, because you go to bed after, but you also have this sort of like mouth sort of like, it's just the flavors in your mouth, like just nothing tastes good after you brush your teeth. So you're used to that. So there's mouthwash spray you can spray in your mouth. There's mouthwash you can swivel. Brushing your teeth early, that works too. All right. All right, let's bring this home here. So a few last things. Before we get into the hypnosis, let's just stop for a moment. I do want to open it up for questions quickly. Do any of you guys have anything so far? Any questions, anything, any thoughts before we sort of get into the hypnosis? All right.
Mm,
Oh,
no. No, but you did have did make some good points about the food noise thing. I do now, like, if I happen to be out, and again, I come in at 8, 9, 10 o'clock after I've eaten already dinner, maybe around 5 or 6. um I start getting that craving again. So the first thing I usually jump for is either a banana or a green shake or some fruit. And I try not to eat too much, but it satisfies the craving.
good. Yeah, that's your blood sugar regulating. Right on. Well, those are good things. Were you gonna say something, Gina?
Yeah, that was, so that was because I was such a sweet eater. And basically, the other night, my blood sugar must have dropped. So I was working. That was my no carb day yesterday. And so I was at work later and I kept getting dizzy, right? Like I was going to pass out. I'm like, what in the hey is going on? But I think my sugar was dipping. So, and of course, I didn't
Alexa.
have anything. Yeah. So I'm not used to that, and it's just getting myself like, I'm drinking a liter of water a day, which is a lot for me. I mean, just that's a big plus.
Yeah. Well, a few things though. Also, one thing you have to realize is like your body is going to be working harder through doing our treatments. Like it's activating your entire system, especially if you're doing a pod and a spot reduction. So your physiological needs are going to heighten, especially if you're working, a pretty intense job. So yeah, here's what I would say. Like really quick strategies for you is like, and again, these are quick things you can easily do. Is like if you have super greens at home, and if you don't buy some, um, or protein powder, if you don't have some, buy some. But you know, whether you buy one for work or you in your purse, or you put it in you put like 5 scoops in Tupperware with a scooper, or a baggie or something. They even make like funnels that you can pour it in. You can have it in a funnel to store it, and then you can just put in your water bottle. But I would have that stuff ready to go. It's going to help you drink more water, because you are going to need to drink more water throughout the process. You're going to find, but that way will help regulate your blood sugar. Um,
Thanks.
Yeah, I do drink
so
a lot of water.
yes, good. So, all right, that's good though. And by the way, quickly, like what you guys are sharing here, these are like Sydney with like the what you mentioned with those replacement snacks, and the context there. That these are the types of things when we do the weekly check-in on Friday, that's a win. It doesn't have to be like, oh, my pants fit better. Yeah, that's great. But like, what are the things that are happening every day that you're not looking at? That's a good one. Gina, for you, a struggle for the weekly check-ins would be exactly what you just said. Hey, it was low carb day, body's not used to it. I'm still looking to drink more water. I felt this, felt that. These are things that I encourage you guys to bring up, because I can promise you there's nothing that you're going through that we haven't helped somebody through. But you can feel like it's more of an issue when you internalize it. So these are really good shares there. And these are stuff that I encourage you guys to, everybody whoever's going to listen to this, to use on a check-in.